Mage has received a rework in 10.1.5. So all 3 specializations got a general tree as well as a spec-specific rework. Frost got the biggest rework. Fire, I would say, was second, and Arcane is in third. So I'm just going to do a quick general overview of the general tree as well as the 3 different specializations. Give you my thoughts on the changes and how it'll actually affect the gameplay of each spec. Right quick, before we get into the video, I just wanted to announce that I have partnered with Apex Gaming PCs. I've come up with my own custom line of computers, price optimized for all your World of Warcraft needs. If you're looking for a new PC, I've come up with 3 different options: the entry-level Wizard, an upgraded Magister, and the great and powerful Archmage setup. Use code Venruki for 10% off any computer on the Apex Gaming PC website. You can check out the link in the description. In terms of the general tree, we can quickly go through it, okay? So I'm going to show you the general tree. We're going to start off with the Arcane Mage, but this general tree is going to be a foundation for all 3 specs. So just quickly go over it. What did you gain? What did you lose? So they made a few things more convenient. So you're going to get shifting power really early on in the tree. It's no longer a capstone. Instead, we got actually, I'll go over that later. So this is all very similar. We have Enchantress Flow. They pruned Rune of Power, so that's not even an option anymore. Rune of Power is Gonzo, which I'm very happy about. Obviously, remove Curse, Alter Time, Shifting Power, Mirror Image, Spell Steal. In terms of new, this is all going to feel very similar. There's not that much here, okay? So as you go down the tree, I think your choices are going to be feeling fairly obvious. It's at this final, second to last row that I think things get pretty interesting here. So this is where I think things get a little bit interesting. Temporal Velocity, you're going to know about that. You're going to know Flow of Time, Frigid Winds. All mage specs are basically going to pick up displacement. Very conveniently located. If you don't know what displacement is, it's basically you can teleport back on your shimmer. So when you shimmer or blink, you can teleport back to its original location. They also buffed it. So when you teleport back, it gives you a slight heal. It's not a strong heal. It's like a 20%, but it's better than nothing. Okay. So all of the mage specs are basically going to get a little bit more mobility for free. In addition to that, you're still going to get Dragon's Breath. You're still going to get greater invisibility. And we now have a talent option between Mass Invisibility and Mass Barrier. So a Frost Mage and a Fire Mage are going to be able to use Mass Invisibility now. However, if you want it to function like it does currently for Arcane, where it Mass Invises your whole team, you have to get improved Mass Invisibility. The regular Mass Invisibility is basically like a Shroud of Concealment. You can use it at the beginning of a game. Gets everyone in stealth, but it's like a slow fade. It's not the same kind of fade that the instant Mass Invis is, unless you get the talent, and they actually added the talent for all of the specs. So for the general tree, that's the big thing. You can pick between Mass Barrier and you can pick between Mass Invisibility. Now, my thoughts on this are, it kind of sucks that Arcane loses a unique PvP talent, because I thought this was like a really cool utility that Arcane Mage did have. But with that in mind, I think it's actually not going to be easy for Frost and Fire to get it, because it costs you a PvP talent. So I feel like there might be a world where maybe you just pick up Mass Barrier. I don't know. We'll have to play around with it more. It is a really strong utility, a 1-minute AoE cloak for your team. So you can avoid crowd control, avoid casting spells. It's pretty big. On the left side of the tree, you have Frigid Winds, Ice Ward, Freezing Cold, which is the Cone of Cold root, and then Ice Cold, which I think is personally going to be awful. Ice Block now reduces all damage taken by 70% for 6 seconds, but no longer grants immunity. Prevents movements, attacks, or casting spells. Does not incur the global cooldown. So this is basically a dispersion you can cast in at the cost of Ice Block, and it doesn't heal you. So you're gonna maybe it'll heal you. I guess you have to get Cryo Freeze. If you get Cryo Freeze, it actually will heal you. I don't really see people picking this because it's just, like I said, it's going to be a 4-minute cooldown dispersion, which I think is just like it's not that big. Okay. Now, the Arcane tree, I think, is the least improved of the 3 specs. So I'm going to quickly go over some of them. Big changes that'll actually change your gameplay. Arcane Barrage no longer has a cooldown, so you can just spam it over and over and over. It's not very high damage. It is decent in execute range, but what it does do is allow you to build up your Arcane tempo really quickly. In terms of talents, there's not that much different. We have a talent called Orb Barrage, which is pretty interesting. You might end up picking it. Arcane Barrage has a 10% chance per arcane charge consumed to launch an arcane orb. So when you barrage with 4 stacks, you have a 40% chance to launch an orb. Now that orb functions like a normal orb where it'll give you charges back if it hits a bunch of people. So it can be kind of interesting if you're like chaining them. But I don't know if it's going to be worth dropping Arcane Harmony for that. Outside of that, I think they made Siphon Storm channel faster. So Evocation is a faster channel now, I do believe. Yeah, Evocation channel is 50% faster. So Siphon Storm might be something that you look for if you want to like buff up your damage and get a big one-shot, even though it's nerfed in PvP. Could be decent. And then outside of that, they basically made it easier to get Nether Tempest. So if you want to get Touch of the Magi, which you always do, you're going to be locked into getting Nether Tempest. So in terms of gameplay, things really didn't change that much. It's still going to be, you know, getting your Surge up. After you Touch of the Magi, you're probably going to use Nether Tempest. And then just your regular Missile Arcane Blast rotation, you know? And your Touch of the Magi is going to hit a little bit harder because of the Nether Tempest ticking. So Nether Tempest still does very underwhelming damage. I think the overall playstyle of Arcane is basically no different, except you have displacement. Okay, so Arcane, the least improved of the specs. Now, I do think it is worth mentioning too for Arcane Mage, there is a spec that some people are excited about. They call it Battle Mage, and basically, Battle Mage is like you just run around and press Arcane Explosion. You're basically an instant cast mage, where you're going to use like your Touch of the Magi, put up Nether Tempest, and then, you know, Barrage, Arcane Explosion, Barrage, freaking. You're basically going to use all instants, and instead of using Blast, you're just going to use Arcane Explosion. I'm not very convinced it's going to be good, but some people seem excited about it. Fire Talent Tree is the second most interesting of them all, okay? We were talking about Mass Barrier probably getting picked quite a bit. Sometimes you use Mass Invisibility for the utility, but in general, I think this is what your general tree is going to look like. This is also what I think your actual talent tree is going to look like. So you can go through the talents and look at them, but in terms of like a playstyle change, the big one is Unleashed Inferno was changed. So while Combustion is active, your Fireball, Pyroblast, Fire Blast, Scorch, and Phoenix Flames deal increased damage and also reduce the cooldown of your Combustion. So you have Unleashed Inferno as a cooldown reduction on Combustion. You also have Kindling on a cooldown reduction for Combustion, and you also have Shifting Power. So I'm gonna put a timer up just so you guys can get an idea of what this looks like, because the way fire plays is going to be very similar, but I think what's going to happen is more of your damage is going to be focused around your Combustion, similar to Shadowlands, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. You're more of a cooldown class, but your cooldowns are going to be up very often. Okay, so I'm going to start this timer and I'm going to use Combustion. Okay, so pop Combust and let's see how long it takes me to get my second Combustion. Okay, so just doing my regular rotation, doing my regular rotation, doing my regular rotation, doing my regular rotation, doing my regular rotation. I'm in a Shifting Power. Okay. Doing my rotation, doing my rotation, doing my rotation, and this is a bit skewed, but you can get a pretty good idea. Look at my Combustion cooldown. Okay. So it's been 30 seconds and my Combustion is almost off cooldown. And obviously I'm critting way more than I normally would, but you have to keep in mind if you do get Pyro procs or Hypothermia procs, it's going to reduce that cooldown of Combustion even more. So Combustion is now off cooldown. That was a 44-second cooldown on Combustion. So that's thanks to a lot of the new CDR talents that Fire has. So think about a Fire Mage using Combustion every 40 seconds. That's in a perfect world. It's more likely going to be around a minute, maybe a minute and 10 seconds, but having Combustion up that often and with the amount of damage Combustion does is going to be really impressive. They also buffed Hypothermia, so Hypothermia lasts a little bit longer, 1 second longer. There are some shenanigans that they added, like your Flame Strike. If you do decide to go on this right side of the tree, which I don't think is going to be good, but if you go on the right side of the tree, they added something called Fueled by Fire, where your Flame Strike actually contributes to your Hot Streak. So it used to be when you used Flame Strike, it wouldn't give you Hot Streak, but they changed that, so you could theoretically use Flame Strike as like a filler spell to get. So like if I Combust, for example, and I Fire Blast, Flame Strike, instant Flame Strike, Fire Blast, Flame Strike, instant Flame Strike, Flame Strike, Fire Blast. You know what I mean? Like you can literally use this as like a rotational button. So there is a world where Fire is going to be able to like do a bunch of Flame Strike damage potentially, because we do have this talent called World in Flames, Empowered Flame Strike, dealing 200% more damage based on the enemy's distance to the center. So if you're constantly nailing people at the center of your Flame Strike, there is like an AoE build that is possible. I don't think that will be good, but it is possible. Another thing that people said that they kind of like here is Meteor. So base Meteor actually cleaves now, which is very interesting. So if you spec in a Meteor, which got moved from the general tree to the fire tree, if you drop a Meteor, it hits everybody for the same amount. So it no longer splits damage. Now, you can pick up a talent called Deep Impact, which now increases the damage of Meteor, but it splits the damage. So this will probably be situationally useful. I think Meteor actually does a significant amount of damage. You know, you have talents like Firefall where your 15 fireballs or Power Blast cause your next fireball to call down a Meteor. That could be interesting. I don't really know. It seems like it'll be really hard to outvalue Hyperthermia. I know Living Bomb got a little bit of a buff. It's not that significant, but it could be good. There is some AoE options for fire that they added, but the biggest thing for me is that there's a lot of CDR now for fire, so you're going to be able to get combustions up more often, and when combust is up, it does more damage. Last, but certainly not least, is Frost. I think is the most interesting of the changes. There's a bunch of things that they did to Frost, so this is the most exciting to me. Frost. Get your keybinds ready, because you're going to have a lot. So there's a few things I just want to point. I'm not going to go through every single talent because a lot of them are very similar, but the key ones to pay attention to is this. Winter's Blessing. It's a new passive that Frost mages have. Your haste is increased by 8%, and you gain, let's see. Let's see if it is. Last, you gain 10% more haste stats from all sources. So you gain more haste from sources. So I don't know. There's two ways to think about this. The first way to think about it is it's going to be really important to stack haste because haste gets you more haste. The other way to think about it is maybe you don't need haste because you passively have good, decent haste, so you can actually afford to stack way more mastery. Because they did change our mastery to be significantly better. So they changed mastery, so it basically buffs every spell. So Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Flurry, grants an Icicle, blah, 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 blah. It's all the same Icicle shit. But Mastery also increases the damage of Ice Lance. It increases the damage of Glacial and Ray of Frost. It also increases the damage of Frozen Orb, Blizzard, and Comet Storm. So Mastery is way better than it used to be for Frost Mage. Way, 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 way better. Okay? They buffed Comet Storm a little bit. They added Glacial Assault. They basically made a bunch of improvements. I still think you're probably going to ignore Fractured Frost. You're going to ignore Cold Front down here. There's a new talent called the Coldest Snap. This one is really interesting. It was better, but they changed it so it doesn't work single target anymore. But basically the way it works is spec Coldest Snap, and now your Cone of Cold is a 45-second cooldown. But when you use Cone of Cold, it resets the cooldown of your Frozen Orb and Comet Storm, and in addition puts a Winter's Chill on everyone. But they changed it so you have to hit 3 or more people, and I think it's not going to be super realistic in PvP for this to happen often, so I doubt you'll really pick it unless you're fighting pet classes. But even then, I'm not very convinced it's going to get used that much. I could be dead wrong about that, but we'll have to wait and see. Other important changes, obviously Glacial Spike. There's nothing really changed with Glacial Spike. They buffed Slick Ice, so Slick Ice used to be 2% bonus haste on Frostbolt, 2% bonus damage on Frostbolt, stacking 10 times. They buffed it so it stacks way faster now. It stacks after 5 times, so you can build up those Frostbolts quicker. Icy Veins has a big change. So Icy Veins is now a 2-minute cooldown down from a 3-minute cooldown. It only increases your haste by 20%, but it summons a water elemental. So when you pop Icy Veins, you get a water ele now. And obviously your water elemental has ranged freeze, it has water jet, but more importantly, it gives you a buff called Frigid Empowerment. So while your water elemental is alive, it gives you 10% more damage. So now when you use Icy Veins, not only do you get the 20% haste, you also get a water elemental that comes out with the utility of a water elemental and gives you 10% more damage. Okay, so you're going to do big, big stuff when that's out. Now, lastly, the most fun thing that they did, in my opinion, the most fun thing and exciting thing that they did for Frost Mage is Ray of Frost. Now, Ray of Frost is kind of annoying because there's so many things you can do, right? You channel Ray of Frost on a Hunter, he feigns it. You channel Ray of Frost on a Priest, he phase shifts it. You channel Ray of Frost on a Rogue, he feints it, he vanishes it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of times where Ray of Frost gets screwed, but what they did is they giga buffed it. So Ray of Frost is now a 1-minute cooldown. I believe it was a 1.5 minute cooldown before, so shorter cooldown. And they also added something called cryotherapy, where each time you consume a Finger of Frost, it increases the damage of your Ray of Frost. So you can see I have 10 stacks of cryotherapy, which basically makes my next Ray of Frost do omega damage. So you're, basically, the general gameplay, I think, of Ray of Frost is going to be something like this, where you put up a Frost Bomb on the target, you flurry them, and then you channel your Ray and line of sight. And then your Ray of Frost is going to 1-dig them. The Frost Bomb is going to explode. And then if you want to, you can follow it up with Lances. But it does a lot of damage, as you can see. I don't know if you did get a chance to see, but I'll show you. So, I'll show you. Let me just pop my pet. But yeah, I think for me, the most interesting thing is that Mastery might end up being really good here. You're going to get to use Comet Storm, which does a little bit more damage. And then obviously the Ray of Frost doing Omega Giga damage is pretty cool. So I don't really know if the playstyle of Frost is going to change. I think you're still probably just going to be kind of stuck into like playing Wizard Cleaves, but we'll have to wait and see. Ray of Frost, you can see it hitting for 200k, 248k, 300k. Now, that's not how hard it hits in PvP. PvP training dummies are bugged, but you can get 130k, 140k ticks of Ray of Frost on players. So if you get a fully loaded, fully channeled Ray of Frost, it can do upwards of like 400, 500k damage with no damage reduction. So it's really, really strong, and it gives Frost some finishing power. So that's basically the rework in a nutshell. I think for this rework, like I said, Fire is more combustion focused. Arcane is very similar, and Frost is probably the biggest winner in terms of playstyle and changes. I don't know how much better it's going to be, but I am excited to mess around with it and see how it goes. YouTube family, what do you guys think? Are you guys excited about the changes? What do you think? Basically, my consensus is that the changes are going to be really fun for PvE. So in PvE, I think the changes are huge. Like no more Rune of Power. I think they made Frost way more fun in Mythic Plus and Raids. Fire and Arcane appear to be better also. In PvP, playstyle is not that different. But I do think Frost is going to be the most intriguing for me personally. Like Ray of Frost just doing a ton of damage is kind of fun.